This video is brought to you by PrizePicks. All right, so interesting day so far. We got two big interviews from Andrew Berry, a press conference from him, and an interview for Todd Monken. I'm going to cover both of these on this channel, so make sure you stay tuned, stay subscribed, stay notified. Make sure you stay notified. Look, man, your home screen right now, it's nothing but shorts on YouTube for whatever reason. So make sure you stay notified so you can get alerts of when these videos drop, especially. So if you're already subscribed, click that notification bell. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and click that subscribe button. But Kevin Clark was interviewing Todd Monken on This Is Football on ESPN. It was a pretty good interview. We're going to listen to parts of it and I'll tell you guys what I think of it, and you guys can tell me what you think in the comment section. So let's just jump into the interview.
What have you seen, just since you started, let's call it 15 years ago, what have you seen as far as how college schemes borrow from pro schemes and high school schemes, and how that's been sort of a great merging?
I think the two things that have evolved most over the last 15 years in our sport has been the spread offense.
Yep.
And then what's evolved off of that, starting with air raid or West Coast, throwing the football, being an 11 personnel. Then it evolved to, all right, quarterback athleticism, QB-driven offenses. And then that led to, okay, less fullbacks, tight ends, less stats, use a quarterback. So the game was more wide open. And that's what you saw at the high school level. So as you're training players, that lends itself, okay, into college. Well, what do the high school players know? Well, they know spread offense. You've got more athletic quarterbacks. You've got less fullbacks. You've got less tight ends. And then that just keeps, it's a trickle up. It's more of an upward of what players and what you see as their skill set. Because anymore, how long do you have in coaching to develop that? Right. By the time we get them, like, how long do you really have to develop a player that's never played fullback to play fullback? By the time he gets really good, you're fired. I mean, what the So it's like, how much time do you really have? And okay, so the evolution of the spread offense and then quarterback driven. Then the other is analytics. Where analytics in terms of how the game is played. And I'm not talking about how you look at drafting. I'm talking about playing the game, styles of concepts, and also decision-making, fourth down calls, possessing the football. That has really come into play the last 10 or 15 years.
It's always interesting to hear Todd talk about like football because he's very knowledgeable, right? Like if Todd does not work out in Cleveland, I would love for Todd to be on TV. Like he's the exact kind of former coach that you want there that I think would be kind of useful because he's very informational, very knowledgeable. Always talks about the history of the game, right there. He's talking about, to start this interview out, kind of a history of like where he's kind of talking about how, high school kind of trickles in to college now and college trickles into the NFL. And part of it, which is something I haven't heard a lot of, is like timelines. It's like you don't have the time anymore to convert guys to a completely different style of offense. You just got to take guys and get them going as quick as possible. And the best way to do that is just to run what they did at college, which has its downsides for sure. But that's kind of what teams have had to do there. He also talks about analytics and, how analytics has kind of changed how football games are managed, right? How you go into a game, kind of similar to like with basketball and how basketball games and how they're played, like whistle to whistle, have changed, where it's more inside outside than it used to be. This is the kind of stuff that's pretty key with the Browns, right? Analytics from everybody who's been in the Browns organization has said very important thing, very important part of what the Browns are trying to do as an organization. And it's good that Todd is on board with all of that.
I think the biggest difference would be the fans will see from 2025 to 2026 with Todd Monken, and then the guys who have going forward, your core, all that.
What would they see different?
Well, just like what are the 2026 Browns going to look like? I know that's a hard question to answer.
Well, it's
in
like I
March.
said, I mean, obviously, as I really it kind of falls into what I said earlier, which is more along the lines of your physicality, your effort, and your execution pop off the tape, because that has nothing to do with what scheme you run. That's just a core principle of, like, the way I like to say it is, as much as I love winning and I hate losing, I despise football. Like, absolutely despise that it doesn't look like you want it to look like. Like, where it's just like you got 10 on the field, you got 12, you're up against the clock, you don't have effort that you look for. It doesn't even look like you've practiced. Sorry, you can bleep that out. But it's like,
no, we're good here.
but it's like, there's nothing worse than that, than having it, because it's a reflection of you. That is you out there. I said that, and I stole it from other people, but I said that in my press conference, man. When Jimmy and Dee sign my check with my name on it, sign a check with my name on it, they expect a kick-ass football team. And my job is to prove them right every day. I mean, that's when I got paid at the last place I was at, and they expected a kick-ass offense. And that was my job, to try and prove that every day. That's what a player's job is. When they sign a check with their name on it, it's their job to prove it every day, just like all of us. That's our job.
Interesting there, right? Look, Todd Monken speaks very differently to the media than Kevin does. I don't think anybody would deny that at this point. I don't think I've ever heard Kevin cuss like in front of the media, right? I personally don't really care for like policing coaches' language. I don't really care for the respectability politics around coaching. If you cuss, you cuss. If you don't, you don't. Like, just be true to yourself is kind of what I think is most important for a head coach. Like, if you are a more reserved guy like Kevin, then be yourself. Don't feel the need to try to be Rex Ryan when you ain't Rex Ryan. And if you're like Todd and you're more of a, more vulgar, I guess, in your language, then be Todd, but don't be insincere. I think that's the worst thing a coach could come off as, is insincere or inauthentic, right? So I think it is a good thing that, whether Todd's cussing up a storm or whether Todd was more like a reserved kind of guy, it's just important that whatever their personality is, however they approach communication, that it is genuinely, like, it feels genuine and it feels authentic. Because you can have a lot of different conversations with a lot of different people, especially football players, and have a lot of different approaches, right? Todd talks about this all the time. John Harbaugh, much different approach than Todd has, right? John is not a cuss a storm at his player kind of coach. He's more of a talker, right, to his coaches, and more of a communicator in that way. And that works for John because that's authentic for John, right? So whatever your communication style is, you got to be authentic, true to yourself, because once players start to smell like bullshit, it's over, dog. Like, you never want to come off as inauthentic to a football locker room, right? So I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, because he cusses, the Browns are going to win more games. I think that's a little silly, but I like that he's authentic and he comes off as authentic. That being said, let's talking about like what he says there. He hates like kind of sloppy operation on offense. I would imagine, right, him as an offensive coordinator, he's going to be frustrated with those things. I do wonder what camp is going to look like, right? It's certainly going to be, I think, a little bit more intense than even last year's was. And last year was a pretty intense camp. It was the most intense Kevin camp that we've had. So I imagine the intensity is going to be up. I imagine we're going to see Todd Monken pissed off a couple of days because there's a lot to learn and a lot of guys who have to learn a lot. Like, if Todd does not want the offense to look like how he describes, I mean, there's a lot of work that needs to be done between OTAs and training camp, and it's not that much time. You got 5 new offensive linemen you got to get acclimated, probably a new wide receiver or two that's got to get acclimated, a quarterback who at best case scenario with Dylan and Shedeur have never been in the situation of being a week 1 starter in the NFL. Or you can go with Deshaun Watson, who hasn't played a football game in 700 days, which we know from the last 700-day layoff has been a problem with Deshaun Watson. Those kind of layoffs have affected him in his ability to play. So there's going to have to be a lot of work done. I imagine this means that camp's going to be a little bit more intense, a little bit more physical, a little bit more lengthy than I think it was last year. And I think Todd's going to be frustrated for a good chunk of it. And that's by design, because the frustration spent there is hopefully going to be to repair things that don't frustrate you during the season. But it might just be a frustrating start to the season. You know, like there's a lot of work that needs to be done, not a lot of time. So it's going to be interesting to see how Todd does handle that, because he does have a lot on his plate right now. And, you know, I fully believe him when he says he wants to, when his name's being signed on the check, he wants to provide a quality service. We all do, but the task ahead of him is quite large. And even though Todd's very experienced as coach, which I think will help him, he's also a first-time NFL head coach. Now, he's been a head coach before at Southern Miss, but this is his first time in charge in the NFL, which provides some unique challenges than, you know, coaching, I believe, in the Sun Belt at the time. So it's a little different, or maybe it was Conference USA. Before we get to this next clip, I got to thank my sponsor, PrizePicks. Hey guys, let me talk to you about my sponsor for this year, PrizePicks. It's a fun way to win cash while you're watching your favorite teams. You can forget about all those complex betting rules. Their app is designed to be incredibly easy to use. Just pick more or less on a few player stats and lock in your lineup. The NBA playoffs are right around the corner, so I got some picks that I want to share. Cavs are about to play the Toronto Raptors this weekend. I got the Cavs keeping Brandon Ingram under 21 points. I got James Harden with more than 12 rebounds and assists. Jarrett Allen, more than 14 and a half points. And then I have RJ Barrett being kept under 19 and a half points. Please check to make sure if PrizePicks is available in your state. You can follow me on the app at Quinn_C to see all of my lineups. Download the PrizePick app today. Play $5 and get $50 in lineups to download the app using the link in the description, and make sure you use the code HMA.
Give me a guy just studying the film, having not gotten in there and being able to do, you know, mini camps and training camp and all that stuff. Give me a guy you think on the Browns that's ready to take a leap.
Well, it's hard because I really think Mason Graham's going to take another step. I think we're going to be able to get Jerry Jeudy back to 2 years ago. And that's not a leap. That's just maybe a reliep.
Relieping.
It's not even a word.
It is
reliep.
now.
But I think we're going to be able to do it. I can't wait to get a full year and off season when we get Q back at running back. I think Fannin in his second year, I think we're going to see another leap. And obviously, Shedeur, Deshaun, I mean, the quarterback position, if there's not a huge leap to be there, I mean, shoot, Deshaun's healthy again. You got Shedeur and Dylan who are one-year players. I mean, shoot, I mean, there ought to be unbelievable growth in that room that I'm excited to get started. Hell, it's a week from today. You know, we get a chance to get started with the guys.
That was an interesting answer. Because when it came to like Mason Graham or Quinshon Judkins, right, he had some very specific answers and things, right? It was more detailed. And then like he talked about quarterback and it was a group answer. It was an answer about the whole position group, right? When he's talking about the guys he thinks sleep, he's not like, oh, the defensive tackle room and Mike Hall, he's not including everybody in it. He's talking about Mason Graham specifically. When he's talking about Quinshon and Harold Fannin, right? Those are individual call-outs. When you talked about the quarterback room, he kind of made it a group thing, which is interesting. Now, this is from the owners' meeting. We know this from his haircut. And we know that at the owners' meeting, he was asked that question about watching tape on this quarterback room, specifically Deshaun Watson, and he did admit that he hadn't watched any of it yet. So that's kind of where he's working from right now at this point in time, right? It's not like more time had passed from that comment to now. So I think it's kind of a reflection of that. I think he just has not made his mind up on what he wants at quarterback. I think like it's pretty obvious to me that the Browns, and you can take this how you want to take this, but I'm just trying to tell you what I believe the truth to be is that the Browns don't really know what they want to do at quarterback right now. All they know they want to do is they want it to be cheap, or their answers to be cheap at the position. They don't want to spend a lot of money, but they don't really know what they're going to do. And it's like, I worry about that strategy, right? Again, Todd's betting on like, hey, Deshaun's going to be healthy. That means he has to be better than he was a couple of years ago. I don't know if that's going to be the case. He says Shedeur another year off season. He has to be better. You would hope that is the case. Same thing with Dylan Gabriel. Now, the big question is, even if those guys do improve, will it be meaningful enough improvement to make a difference in the Browns' outcomes this year? That's a whole nother question to be had, but that's kind of where the Browns are at. Some definitive plans about other players, right? Very detailed breakdown of Mason Graham and why he thinks he's going to be better and all that. But when it comes to the quarterback, a little bit more in general, which I think is also reflective of what we found out at his press conference when Daniel Fouisse asked him at follow-up about watching tape on Deshaun, that they don't really know what they're doing at the quarterback position right now. They haven't really made up any decision. I think that's kind of where they are, which I'm not telling you how to feel about that. I'm just telling you that the dots are connecting, that's likely where they are.
Just for big picture on Shedeur, just year one, just what do you see on film?
I think you see playmaking ability. I think you see a player that is confident in his skill set. So when you see that playmaking ability and inner confidence, you say, okay, there's something to work with there. So I think that's the thing that excites you. I said it this morning that 15 or 20 years ago, they would have said that Shedeur Sanders was athletic. They would have said he could escape. Well, the game's changed so much to now he's not a mobile quarterback. No, he's mobile. He's just not as mobile as what we've come to. We've come to where Lamar Jackson or the quickness that these players have, their escapability is completely changed from when it was. But I do think what you see on tape are those aspects. A very young player that really didn't grow up in a pro-style offense. It's not his fault. That's okay. I was at Oklahoma State with Brandon Weeden, and we were air raid, and he got drafted here. He didn't grow up in that. That's not their fault. Now it's going to be our fault if we can't develop them. Then it's our fault. It's our job is to develop all the players that show up in the building and try to get the best out of all of them, create the best version of them.
All right, rapid fire. Most underrated.
All right. Sorry for the Brandon Weeden jump scare. I didn't know he was going to pop off with the Brandon Weeden jump scare. Okay. Whew, goodness gracious. That's the worst quarterback I've ever seen in a Browns uniform. But yeah, what he said about Shedeur, I would agree. Like the confidence that Shedeur has in his game, I think it's probably his best trait. I think if you look at the quarterbacks in the Browns room, right, Shedeur is the most confident in himself. And that does lead to him probably having the better, like, high-end moments of all of those quarterbacks. I think the big thing with Shedeur, and I'm going to do a video that breaks this down, is just finding some more discipline in how he approaches his process on going through his plays, right? I think that's the big thing Todd has to provide for him, is some structure and some mental discipline there, because there are times where Shedeur is not the most disciplined quarterback, and that leads to a lot of the things that could take him off the field early if he is the starter early on in the season. So, yeah, I think Todd has a good grasp on Shedeur. And again, like, you listen to his answer on Shedeur, it's a lot more defined than anything he said about Deshaun Watson. And he also didn't feel the need to, like, mention that he didn't watch tape on Shedeur, because I think he has watched tape on Shedeur. I think the only quarterback that he did not watch was Deshaun Watson. I think that was intentional. We can debate whether that's a good idea or bad. I'm just telling you what's obvious, right? Whenever he's asked about Deshaun's tape, he mentions he didn't watch it. Whenever he's asked about Shedeur, he doesn't mention that he didn't watch it. Whenever he's asked about Dylan, he doesn't mention he didn't watch it because he's watched it. So yeah, I think it's interesting that that's the dynamic going into the spring. We'll see what Deshaun's able to provide out there. I think the best case scenario for the Cleveland Browns at this point with this current quarterback room is that Shedeur takes the job in the spring and we could just roll with him as the starter throughout the summer, and then hopefully that works out for the fall. But we'll see if that happens. I think that's what a lot of people are hoping for, but I don't know if that's necessarily the most likely situation. But that was Todd Monken's interview with ESPN. Make sure you guys go check out the whole interview because he talks about much more than just Browns football and that. Like, if you're just interested in football in general or just in sports in general, this is a pretty good interview because he connects all the things that he talks about with football into like other sports. Like, there's a whole 10-minute section in this interview where he's talking about baseball. Like, it's a pretty good interview. And certainly if Todd does not work out here in Cleveland, he has a great future ahead of himself in the media. I think he is the kind of perfect former coach to have like a podcast that would actually be good, right? Not just like old guys saying old guy shit, which most former coach podcasts kind of turn into that, but like an actually good podcast because he's more insightful and thoughtful about the game and sports. And he's like a naturally curious guy, which I think leads to some interesting answers here. And pretty transparent too, for better or worse, right? But that's the Todd Monken interview. Thought it was interesting. Thought we got some new insight from the owners interview, from the owners meeting about where Todd is and isn't with the quarterback room. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.